course, we know for a fact that a great deal of that simply gets diverted to the troops on both sides. So whilst they are busy destroying the infrastructure, we're busy rebuilding it for them to make use of how they wish.
So am I right in saying there's very little disincentive for conflict?
Actually, there's no disincentive for conflict. The only disincentive for conflict is at grassroots level, where a woman is fed up of her husband and her sons being killed or being taken for military service, fed up of her crops being burnt, her tukul being burnt and her cattle being stolen. But in terms of the leadership, which doesn't suffer from those problems, obviously, there is no disincentive. In fact, there's a great incentive to maintain the status quo, because if peace were to break out, then the chances are that we could start to cut back on aid. And if we cut back on aid, then what happens about taxes and taxation? And
do they sell the grain?
There's a black market for grain.
Now, what would you estimate the cost of a bag of grain for delivery at?
I wouldn't even begin. I mean, it must be well over $200 a sack.
Yeah, okay.
But I mean, I really...
Each Herc flight to drop grain costs per day?
Well, it's £100,000 a day.
Pound?
$100,000 a day to run a Herc. So each Herc will do 2 rotations, so it's $50,000 per rotation. And each Herc carries 250 sacks.
Okay.
So that's $200 to start with.
Okay, and then there's of course the camp infrastructure, the
Well, the camp
organizational.
infrastructure also supports water programs, medical programs, the polio campaign.
Okay, so we'll not even look at that. We'll just go straight at the Herc.
Oh, that's the cost of moving the grain from America. It's all American grain, so it costs moving the grain from America by ship to Mombasa, by road from Mombasa up to here, storage here, and then flying it out. And then, the cost of the WFP food monitors and food assessment staff, who are purely concerned with food distribution, nothing to do with medical programs, water programs.
Right. What about the LRA and Uganda?
Pain in the arse.
Which one?
LRA. Our problem is simply, it's not so much that we're targeted around here, it's just that they lend a great deal of instability into the area.
Are you feeding them?
Not as far as we're aware. I mean, they must be. We've had various food convoys, I think, on these roads hit in Uganda. Not WFP food convoys, but food convoys, subcontractors to WFP. An NPA's been hit. They lost a driver, and I think what they call a turnboy, an assistant driver. That's about 2 months ago. So although we're not we don't appear to be targeted, we suffer just from the general level of instability in the area.
SPLA and LRA are enemies.
Yeah.
How do they operate? Where do they operate?
Well, the fact is, I mean, this whole area, despite what it looks like on the map, I mean, these are, I think, 60 metre squares, 75 kilometre squares, or 60. No, they're nautical miles. They're 60 nautical mile squares.
Right.
So it's a huge scale. Mm-hmm. And the whole place, despite all these names and everything, is virtually deserted. So it's dead easy to move around there without bumping into an SPLA patrol or an LRA patrol. So the LRA seem to be able to move through those areas without too much hindrance from the SPLA.
Uganda?
We don't, apart from possible support of the SPLA by the Ugandan army. The Ugandan army seems to be fairly ineffective in this area, rather like the Kenyan army is. Between Loki and Nadapal, the border, that area there, which is 20 odd miles of Kenyan territory, is actually policed by the SPLA. Kenyans can't control it. So Kenya has effectively given up a chunk of its territory to a rebel faction operating in another country. We closed the road between Lokichokio and Nadapal last year sometime. Because of the number of deaths on that road, including I think a 5-body ambush, 5 dead bodies. So we closed the road. There's a huge furore about it. They demanded that we open it. We refused. I mean, we didn't close it. We stopped all OLS traffic from using it. So effectively we closed it. And we refused to open it until somebody could guarantee us safety. The SPLA guaranteed us safety.
Who was doing the ambushes?
Some of it was supposed to be sort of local bandits, Tikana, Toposa, but I think you'll probably find that a lot of it was SPLA. So we closed the road until they guaranteed our safety on that road, and since then we've had no incidents on that road.
Okay.
But effectively, the Kenyan government has given up control of that area to the SPLA. The same thing up here. Ugandan army just is ineffective in the north of Uganda. They can't control the area. I don't know if they even pretend to anymore. Now we've got a base down here in a river, and we use a road up here from the river through to Yei and Maridi for food convoys. I think we've now banned use of this road across the country because of the dangers of ambushing and hijacking by various rebel factions, but the LRA and the West Bank Nile Front, which operates in this area, and also just by bloody thugs with AK-47s because of the Orban UN bylaw.
West Bank, Nile Front. Now, I think John was telling me about reports of the LRA being newly equipped from Congo.
Right.
What can you tell me about that?
Don't know anything about that. I mean, I have responsibility for the staff in this area, down in the river, mainly because we've got far more resources that we can actually help staff in this area, whereas Camp Harbour couldn't. I have not been able to get around to actually doing a recce of this area and find out what the real problem is. So I am still a long way behind the power curve in implementing security in that region.
Mm-hmm.
But we've actually now got a link with the river, an email link in which they get our security reports, we get their security reports ours on a daily basis, theirs on a weekly basis.
Mm.
So we're slowly sealing the holes in the system.
Okay, so I would be close if I suggested that the SPLA don't like you because under your efforts to be more even-handed, you opened up some of his rival areas.
We have now opened up rival faction areas to NGO support, NGO aid.
And you have proof of assessments being written before they're even seen on the ground?
I think I can probably prove that they're doing what do they call them?
Foregone conclusions, situating the estimate.
Yeah, that kind of thing. They're doing interventions without doing the assessment beforehand. So I come to you and say, I need food in Chugadum. How many people are there? 150,000. Okay, we'll be there tomorrow.
Who makes those decisions? Nairobi?
Yeah, in effect, there is a great deal of guidance. I wouldn't blame the office just here. I think you'll find there is a pressure, leadership, whatever you guys want to come down from Nairobi. Bearing in mind that's also where the SPLM headquarters is, in Nairobi.
Yeah. Anybody else have headquarters there?
SPLM, OLS, SRA. I mean,
That's all SPLA.
Yeah.
Oh, RAS, okay.
Yeah. I mean, they all have an office in Nairobi, but the SPLM, I mean, this is where John Grain lives, in Nairobi.
Oh, yeah.
In his sort of $1 million house with sat phones and satellite TVs and all what comes. Whilst his probably people are starving to death, but there you go.
He's working for the better good where he can do the most good, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Okay. MSF put out a report. You got that?
Haven't got the report, but I've got our response to the report.
I've
the
seen.
MSF report was critical of the OLS system, which I think also raised some of the similar questions, similar points that we have sacrificed neutrality and humanitarian principles for political expedience.
Political expedience.
And OLS has tried to defend themselves. I'm not sure they've done a very good job of it. And MSF may have been a little bit simplistic, but nevertheless, it would be very hard to put together a decent argument against a really strong defence. And I would suggest that my own position is a classic case where the fact that we are letting them PNG me simply gives them a bit more power to PNG my successor, and a bit more power to PNG. Every time we keep drawing a line in the sand and then stepping back from it, they step over it, so we draw another line in the sand. They will use that power if we give it to them, and we have given it to them.
Have any of the other factions spoken out against this PNG?
Raz has spoken out very strongly, apparently. They've written a letter, the head of Raz, a guy called Simon Kwan, has written a letter to Riek Machar, also to a minister, Gad Quoth, who is a Raz official, minister in the government. They've also written to Carl Tinsman, making it quite clear their stand on the whole issue, that they feel I'm being victimised simply for being even-handed.
Okay.
And as I for a lot of the NGOs, it's interesting to know.
So, if I could get some proof, some documents.
Let's see what we got. Last year, when General Paulino was based in Mankien, still is based in Mankien, one of his commanders, a guy called Philippe Baivan, defected to the SPLA. Now, the press reports have stated that he defected with 1,000 troops. That's been impossible to verify. It looks like it was considerably less than that, but included families, women and children as well. Now, he moved across from Mankien in the Upper Nile region, which is primarily SSIA, totally. He moved into the Bara Ghazal region, Philippe Baivan, and established himself down here at a place called Mayenjur. Now at that stage there was no food going into this area, but they managed to get some food from Thiek Thao, about 8 hours walk to the south. Now we went in to see Carabino and Paulino, myself and John, and they warned us that we should not drop food into Mayenjur, because that would be directly feeding the troops. However, WFP, and we actually put Mayenjur out of bounds. WFP did, however, continue to provide food to Thiek Thao, and the message was sent out to the village chiefs in this area that if they needed food, they were to move down to Thiek Thao to get it. Now the problem with all of this is that the basic problem in South Sudan for a lot of people is lack of food. It's not lack of Lamborghinis or Porsches or Ferraris, it's lack of food. And as in any political society, most people's political vote will go to the organisation that does most for them. Now in this situation, the organisation that does most for them is the organisation that can feed them. Now if the SPLA can persuade these people that their food is being delivered to them as a result of the efforts of the SPLA or SPLM, then that is what's going to happen. So they'll be persuading us, telling us where to drop food, in order that they can tell the people on the ground that they have supplied food and that therefore the SPLM need to support the political support of these people. And this is the fear of people like Carabino, because the fact that there is an internal border here doesn't mean very much at all, because by delivering food to Thiek Thao, which is an SPLA territory, these people from these other villages in what is currently an SSIA territory will also be dragged across the border. So these people that are in an SSIA territory and are across the border, they will in fact be shifting their political allegiance, their affiliation to the SPLA. So food is being used as a political weapon. I can't actually drive you to the polls in my nice Rolls Royce on polling day, but I can drag you across the border and offer you a sack of grain, which will get you to support me. And that is yet another example of how food is being used as a political weapon in this war and sustaining the war effort.
Good.